Welcome back to Build by Shufti. I am Jiad Cheema, product analyst at Shufti. In episode 1, we looked at the first layer of our GLOCAL approach, local to your company. How identity and compliance need to reflect the industry, the risk model, and the way businesses actually operates. Today, we are moving to the second layer, local to every country. This is where global identity verification gets complicated because expanding into a new market isn't simply a question of adding another country to a coverage map. Identity documents change, languages and scripts change, the information on those documents change, regulations change, the methods regulators accept for remote identification can change, digital identity infrastructure changes, and the fraud you are trying to detect changes as well. So when we talk about global reach with real local depth, this episode is really about what local depth looks like in practice. How do you build one platform that can operate globally without assuming that identity works the same way everywhere? Joining me again is Daniela, Marin, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Shufti. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me for episode 2. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
So the very first question today is, a lot of identity providers can point to a map and say they have a global coverage. What separates broad geographic coverage from actually being able to perform well across very different markets?
First of all, coverage does matter, but I think the real question we need to ask here is, what do we actually mean by coverage? Is it simply that your API can accept a document from a country? Or does it mean that you've seen enough real traffic there to understand the documents, understand the scripts, the local rules, and the things that tend to go wrong? Those are very different standards. We at Shufti see real verification traffic from around 250 territories every month. So our understanding of those markets comes from what we're actually processing, not just from having a document template in a database. That's really what we mean by global. You need global infrastructure so a customer can expand without changing identity providers every time they enter a new market, but you also need the local depth so users in those markets aren't treated like edge cases. And Big Cash, our client, comes to mind as a very good example here. Big Cash is an Indian gaming platform that expanded internationally and needed a KYC setup that could grow with the business without adding friction or rebuilding the process in every market. Today, Big Cash uses Shufti eIDV across more than 50 countries. And for me, that's the important part. Those aren't just 50 countries on a coverage map. There are 50 different regulatory environments, user populations, 50 different risk profiles. So the real test of coverage is what happens after you launch. Can legitimate users get through? Can you understand the documents and local scripts? Can you adapt the controls for a particular market? And can you do all of that without rebuilding the integration? If not, then technically supporting a country doesn't mean very much. So I put it simply, global coverage gets you into the market, but local performance makes it work.
You really are good giving examples and explaining everything in a very simplistic manner. So the very next question is, one of the first challenges in a new market is simply being able to read the identity documents correctly. OCR can sound like a fairly basic technology. So why does it become such an important part of global identity verification?
Well, first of all, identity documents are much harder to read reliably than people imagine. OCR is often described as one universal process. There's a text and an image, the technology reads it, and that's it. In identity verification, a single extraction error can change the result for the entire process. For example, a lot of things can go wrong. You might confuse a number with a letter in a document number. You might split a name incorrectly. You might mishandle a diacritic. You might read the right characters but put them in the wrong identity field. And then you also have different scripts: Japanese, Arabic, Korean, Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese. You're no longer dealing with minor variations of the same document. The structure can be different, the script is different, the way names are presented can be different, and even the location of important information on the document can be different. That's why Shufti has built its own OCR technology specifically around identity documents rather than relying on a generic document reading engine.
Oh, that's great. And I guess that's actually where the accuracy comes from. So the next question is, how has Shufti built our OCR technology to perform across that level of document and language diversity?
Yes, the diversity is actually much greater than most people expect. Shufti can process more than 15,000 identity document types, and that isn't just theoretical coverage. We see that diversity in the traffic we actually process. Our top 20 document types account for only around 67% of our verifications. So roughly a third of the volume we handle comes from the long tail of documents outside the most common types like passports and national ID cards. And you can see that in the performance. We achieved very strong accuracy across complex scripts including Arabic, Japanese, Chinese, and Vietnamese. And I have a very good example in Japan. One of our global payments customers, we're talking about a very large enterprise here. We saw an opportunity to improve the Japan-specific OCR model for this customer. Because we own that technology, we were able to tune it around the documents and extraction patterns we actually see in that market. And that took extraction accuracy from around 92% to 96.5%. At scale, this is a very meaningful improvement for a lot of real people. It means fewer legitimate customers are being asked to retry, and fewer cases are being pushed into manual review simply because the technology is struggling with a local document. And that is really GLOCAL at the document level. It's easy to say, yes, we support Japan. The harder part is actually understanding Japanese documents, Japanese scripts, and how the data needs to be extracted reliably.
Great insights on the OCR accuracy. And the very next question is, reading a document correctly is only one part of the problem. How much can regulatory and compliance logic change as a business moves from one jurisdiction to another?
It can change quite significantly. A document can be completely genuine and still not be acceptable in the same way in every market. That's because authenticity is only one part of the question. Different countries have different KYC rules, AML requirements, sanctions frameworks, and expectations around customer risk. You really see that when a company starts expanding. MacroPay is a great example. They operate across the EEA and other international markets, so their challenge wasn't simply verifying more customers. It was managing different regulations, different customer types, and different levels of risk as well, without ending up with a different compliance system for every country. They had looked at using multiple providers and some in-house solutions as well, but that created more complexity and it made it harder to scale. So Shufti became a central identity and compliance layer within their payments infrastructure. That gives them KYC and KYB risk-based verification journeys, watchlist screening, and connections into their wider AML and transaction monitoring processes. The important part is that the journey can change depending on the risk. A lower risk customer might go through standard KYC, while a higher risk customer or business might need enhanced checks. For MacroPay, that doesn't need to mean that a new system is built completely from scratch each time. We also worked with their teams to structure the KYC and KYB journeys and define the AML logic and fit those processes into their wider compliance environment. The result is a more centralized setup, less manual work, and better visibility across onboarding and ongoing monitoring. And that makes expansion much easier because when MicroPay enters another market, they don't have to rebuild the compliance infrastructure from scratch. I think that's a very good example of GLOCAL in practice. One compliance foundation, but with enough flexibility to adapt the rules and risk controls to each market.
Great examples. So the very next question is, local variation doesn't stop once the identity has been verified. It also affects AML screening, particularly when names are written, structured, or transliterated differently. How does Shufti approach that?
Names are one of the hardest parts because the same person's name can appear differently from one market to another in one document compared to another. The spelling can change, accents can appear or disappear, surnames can be written differently, and even the order of the first and family names can vary. If your AML screening relies mainly on fuzzy text matching, that can create a lot of noise. The system is essentially asking, does the name look similar to a name on a watch list? And that can lead to compliance teams reviewing large numbers of false positives, especially when dealing with common names. That's a challenge we hear all the time within AML. At Shufti, we approach this through our proprietary name matching engine. It is built to handle different spellings, phonetics, variations, diacritics, transliteration, aliases, spacing, hyphenation, and of course different cultural naming convention. It can also deal with imperfect source data, including OCR errors. But the bigger advantage is the context around the name, because identity verification and AML sit within the same platform with Shufti. We can screen verified identity data rather than relying only on what somebody typed into a form. So instead of asking, do these names look similar? We can get closer to asking, do we have enough evidence to believe that this is actually the same person? That moves the process closer to entity resolution rather than simple string matching. And because we own the matching logic, customers can also adjust the sensitivity based on their own risk appetite rather than being forced into one fixed threshold. So when we talk about local depth in AML, it is not just about having the right watch lists, it's about understanding how names behave across languages, across cultures, and using enough context to separate a genuine risk from a false positive.
So the next question is, we have talked about the complexity of physical identity documents, but many markets are also developing stronger digital identity infrastructure. How does that change the way businesses can verify customers?
That's a great question. Shufti is giving businesses more choice in how they verify identity. Local depth doesn't always mean getting better at reading physical documents. In some markets, the better experience may not be asking for a document at all. Different countries are at very different stages when it comes to digital identity. Some have established government-backed ID schemes, others have authoritative databases that can be used to confirm identity information, and some are moving further towards digital wallets. That's where eIDV becomes very valuable. Shufti can verify the information a user provides against authoritative government and commercial sources, and we're supported digital identity schemes as well. That can enable documentless onboarding journey, so the user may not need to find a passport, photograph it, and upload it at all. Today, our eIDV capability covers more than 70 markets across more than 200 sources, with support for over 50 digital ID schemes and biometric sources. From a customer experience perspective, that can remove a lot of unnecessary friction, but it also reflects a broader shift in identity verification. A global platform needs to support different forms of trusted identity infrastructure, not just different physical IDs. So in one market, the strongest route may still be a passport or a national ID card, but in another, it may be an authoritative database, and in a third market, it could be a digital identity scheme or wallet. So that's GLOCAL in practice, supporting the identity infrastructure that works best in each market, but bringing it together.
That's the episode 2 of Build by Shufti. Today we looked at the second layer of the GLOCAL, local to every country, because global identity verification isn't simply a question of how many countries appear on a coverage map. The document changes, the script changes, the regulatory framework changes, the verification method can be changed, the digital infrastructure changes, and the fraud and its patterns also change. The challenge is making all of that local complexity work with one global platform, so businesses can enter new markets without rebuilding their identity infrastructure, and the legitimate users are not disadvantaged because they happen to carry a document, speak a language, or live in a market that a generic system understands less well. That's the local depth behind the global reach. In our final episode, we will change the lens of one more time. We have looked at every industry and every region. Next is every use case, how identity moves beyond the initial onboarding check and becomes part of a wider customer relationship. From establishing identity at sign up to authentication, ongoing risk, AML, and decisions businesses need to make long after the customer first enters the platform. I'm Jiad, and this has been Built by Shufti. Thanks for listening. Thank you.